Did I make top 32?
No. I didn't make it. I'm in 38.
What?
Machinedramon, I know a lot of people are on it, and I know like the big boss monster is very great, but it just hasn't been doing a lot, honestly.
Machine.
It's really good in the side events.
Yeah, I was gonna say this joint does nothing, but they got Ramon, which helps speed it up.
It's like they got rid of one, but the deck's core weaknesses are still there. Like it gets outsped. I think there are better control black decks in the format.
I'll have to see you guys next year, because I'm winning next time. 12, 13, 15! 15! I made top 32 as well, baby. We're going to day 2. We're going to day 2. Well, hello there. My name is Ben, and I'm sure you guys could already know by now, the title is not clickbait. Although if you've already watched my vlog, you would have already known that. But as promised, I'm here to provide you my Machinedramon deck profile for the Digimon TCG Nationals of 2024. Now, of course, I do acknowledge that the list is a little bit old, considering that a lot of sets have come out since then. So, unlike my usual deck profiles, while I'm showing you guys the cards, I will also be giving you guys updates of what I would change in the list moving forward. Alright, let's stop wasting your time, let's get right to the deck profile. Now, of course, before we dive into it, I do have to give you guys the reasoning as to why I brought this deck into the tournament. For those of you who weren't aware, this tournament took place during EX5 meta, pre-ban list, mind you. So that means Anubismon was at full power, and spoiler alert, Anubismon did win the entire event. So why would I bring Machinedramon? Well, half of it is because I was a little bit salty after my run in last year's Nationals. But since then, I've been playing the deck for an entire year, and every set since then, I've been basically bringing my Machinedramon to every winner box in my locals, and seeing just how good it is in the upcoming meta. And lo and behold, my Machinedramon came on top every time, so clearly I was getting really good with the deck. So might as well see if I can actually take it in for round 2. And with the list that I cooked up here, I think it did a really good job against Anubismon too. If you actually looked at the records of the vlog video, it had an exact 50-50 win ratio against Anubismon. Pretty much exactly how as I anticipated. But that's not a backstory, let's get into it. And here we are yet again, and we have both camera 1 and camera 2. And like always with my deck profiles, we gotta start off with the level 6s of the deck, aka the main focus. What are we trying to do? Well, I think it would be important to start off with the brand new level 6 that Machinedramon got in BT12. And that, of course, is none other than the BT12 Chaosdramon X antibody. It having the excellent Digivolution condition of Digivolving from a Machinedramon or a Chaosdramon for only 2, and having the all turns, this Digimon gains all the effects of all the Machinedramons as well as the Chaosdramons in its sources. Now keep in mind, because this is an all turns continuous effect, that means the moment you Digivolve onto him, you will also be copying their respective Digivolution effects as well. In it having the start of your main phase, we can place any machine or cyborg from our trash at the bottom of this card's sources. It means that we're going to be able to reuse any sources we may lost when we're trying to protect ourselves. But that's not all this card has to offer. It has one little last ability of all turns once per turn. When this Digimon would be deleted, we trash one from our opponent's security stack. Now of course, you might just be thinking that this is more of a punishment effect to our opponent whenever they try to delete it, but what if I told you that this is actually how it enables a Machinedramon to OTK? Well, that'll lead into the combo tutorial part of the video that I'll get to very, very soon. And next up, I can't obviously have a Machinedramon deck profile without showing the deck's bread and butter. We are running 3 copies of the BT11 Mugendramon. Now for those of you who don't remember what this card does, it has the effect of, on play and when Digivolving, we get to mill the top 5 cards of our deck, get one analog man from among them, and then get a machine or cyborg either into our hand or put it underneath it as a source. So not only does this help fill up our trash extremely quickly, it helps us find any missing pieces that we may need, and that nifty effect of being able to slide a machine or cyborg underneath it as a source also allows it to be a nice blitz for game with Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, since it does have a play cost of 11. But the most important effect of this card, in my opinion, is actually going to be the on deletion, which is by placing one analog man from our field at the bottom of the deck, we can then play a Machinedramon in our hand for free, which, spoiler, is also part of how the deck is able to OTK. And also, for those of you who were able to watch the vlog, it is actually how I was able to prevent a lot of my opponent's OTKs as well. Because remember, the Chaosdramon X antibody is able to copy both of our Chaosdramons as well as our Machinedramon's effect. And if we have a BT11 Machinedramon underneath, not only will we be able to mill an extra 5 cards when we go into the Chaosdramon X, we will also be able to copy its on deletion effect. Meaning that if we're up against any deck that is very fast or is trying to OTK us or has a way to out the Machinedramon stack, we can actually just let it die and then go into a Machinedramon on our opponent's turn, potentially ending it. Which actually segues in really well to the next card that we're going to be bringing in, which is going to be playing 3 copies of the EX1 Machinedramon. And as you guys can see, I do in fact have 3 copies of the golden Machinedramon. They weren't easy to find, and they sure weren't cheap. But boy do I love them. Aren't they super pretty? Ah, I love it. Now, this card is extremely old, so I expect you guys to already know this effect by now. But in case you guys don't know, it has the effect of on play, we get to put up to 5 level 5 red or black sideboards with different numbers from our trash underneath it as a source to gain 1 memory. So as you can see, it is actually a combination of this card with the on deletion of the BT11 Machinedramon is how we're actually going to be able to preemptively end our opponent's turn, because we're going to be gaining 5 memory in the process, which is usually a turn ender in most situations. It also has the nifty protection effect of this Digimon's DP cannot be reduced, while also having the regular protection that Machinedramon is knowing for, which is when this Digimon would be deleted, we can trash 2 security in order to keep it around. Now, we should also keep in mind that the Chaosdramon X antibody's ability to trash our opponent's security is also a wood effect, which means that they are both interruptive effects, which means that because of that, we're able to actually trash the security first, and if we wanted to keep it around, we gotta actually burst to level 5s with the effect of the EX1 Machinedramon. So it's really a best of both worlds if I'm being honest. But the bigger question is, why are we running 3 copies? Well, originally I was actually running 4 copies of the BT11 Machinedramon, but as we were getting more and more sets, Machinedramon was getting a lot more easier to be outed. So there actually was a time period where I was running 4 BT11 Machinedramons before, but because Machinedramon is a lot more easy to get outed now, I actually wanted to be able to have a Machinedramon that I can hit on the clapback as soon as possible, with cards like Attack of the Heavy. And hard playing a Chaosdramon for full cost didn't seem very valuable, and back when I was only running 2 copies of the EX1 Machinedramon, I found myself in a lot of situations where I would burn it a little bit too quickly, and then I had to be digging even harder to find the other copy to go for my endgame or my OTK. And also, if we are running 3 copies of the EX1 Machinedramon, we can actually make use of that protection of a cannot be DP reduced for against matchups like Chaosdramon, meaning that we'll have an impenetrable tower for anything that Chaosdramon tries to throw at us, and all of his Marcuses are just gonna die if they ever attempt to swing. So that is why we're running 3 copies. And speaking of Chaosdramon, we of course have to be running 3 copies of the EX3 Chaosdramon as well. Honestly, going into this after digivolving into a BT11 Machinedramon for only 1 memory is so extremely strong, especially when we combine it with the on-play and digivolving effect of by putting up to 3 level 5 sideboards with different numbers from our hand or trash underneath as a source, we can de-digivolve one of our opponent's Digimon by 1 for each one we slid in, which means at most we can be able to de-digivolve 3 one of our opponent's Digimon, which honestly, in case you guys haven't noticed, as the game has progressed, it is the second best removal in the entire game, just under DP reduction. It also has the similar protection of the EX1 Machinedramon of when it would be deleted, we can burst 2 level 5 sources, but it also protects from returning to hand or bottom deck. So that means against decks like Mirage, for example, is not going to be able to get rid of this thing. And that protection in itself is already pretty important in itself, and that is why we run 3 copies. So as you can see, we are running 11 level 6s, which is definitely a little bit more on the heftier side when it comes to top ends. But what are we going to be feeding these machines? Well, that leads us to the level 5s of the deck. And I'm going to be starting off with the duplicate level 5s that we are playing in this deck. These level 5s are the most important ones in my opinion, and that is why we run multiple copies. So of course, we do run 2 copies of the BT8 Metalgreymon, it having the inheritable effect of, while this Digimon is a machine type or a Dragonkin, it can attack an opponent's unsuspended Digimon. And it also has a pretty nifty effect of when digivolving, we can de-evolve one of our opponent's Digimon, as well as kill a 3k DP or less. Very useful for punishing early aggro plays. But of course, the reason why we play 2 copies is because we're mainly for that inheritable effect. We need to see this fairly often, in my opinion. I would run 3, but I ran out of space, so it's just 2 copies for now. And for the next level 5 we are playing the BT11 MetalTyrannomon. Now originally, I actually ran 2 copies, but of course, I did promise that this is going to be an updated list as well. We are also running the ST17 Rapidmon as well. Now Rapidmon is super awesome for the deck because it also gives us another level 5 that we can digivolve into that offers digivolve 1, but it also is another level 5 with the inheritable effect of when the Digimon would delete another Digimon in battle, we get to trash the top card of our opponent's security stack, which means it's actually a lot more possible for us to trash 2 cards from our opponent's security stack extremely easily because these are different numbers. But of course, during the national tournament, I was only allowed to play with MetalTyrannomon, and that's because the Star Deck Rapidmon did not come out yet. But realistically, we actually can still trash 2 of our opponent's security if we went into the EX3 Chaosdramon first, and then following it up by going into the BT12 Chaosdramon X antibody. But this is what we're playing now. And for the next level 5 that we play duplicates of is a very important level 5 that in my opinion makes a lot of matchups trivial. We play 2 copies of the BT9 Megadramon. And the reason why this card is so important is because because it's able to pop cost 3 Digimon as well as Tamers. This card by itself makes the red hybrid matchup trivial, while also helping out your Hunters matchup for all you Machinedramon players who struggle against Hunters. By popping up their cost 3 Tamers that have different colors, it actually makes it harder for them to get the color requirements that tuck Machinedramon underneath a Tamer or a Digimon. And it's also still very useful in being able to pop cost 3 bodies, which of course in the EX5 meta, that meta was fairly wide, so having more inheritables that is able to help us clean up the board is going to be very important, and that's why we run 2 copies. And last but certainly not least, for the level 5s that we are playing at multiple copies, we do run 2 copies of the Metalmamemon from EX1. Well, actually I did play the EX1 Mamemon at 2 copies, but the reason why we bring it down to 1 is because nowadays I'm actually playing BT15 Megadramon. Now, of course, the first thing that's important about the Metalmamemon going first is that it has the inheritable effect of, if the Digimon is machine type, when attacking, we can delete one of our opponent's cost 5 or less Digimon, which, for the Anubismon, it is actually very common for them to have multiple cost 5 or less Digimon on the board. For example, things like Ignitemon or the Dorimon X antibody, as well as the Saberdramon too. Anubismon as a strategy is a deck that thrives on having a wide board presence and then overwhelming their opponent with that. So with inheritables like this, combined with the BT9 Megadramon, mind you, as soon as they bring out their first Anubismon and do their Minervamon combo, we can then follow it up with a Chaosdramon of our own, de-digivolving that Anubismon by 3, running over their Minervamon, popping out cost 5, as well as popping out cost 3, which really sets them back far a lot, and that is why I think this deck has a pretty good chance against Anubismon, even at full power. But nowadays, since the Anubismon got hit, and of course we do have a new tool of the BT15 Megadramon, I think it's actually all the more worth it, because that inheritable effect of de-digivolve 1 is extremely strong. And what did we say before? De-digivolve is the second most strongest removal in the game, which means we don't have to worry about burning our EX3 Chaosdramons to de-digivolve our opponent's Digimon too early. It even has a solid milling effect too of on-play when digivolving, so we don't even feel bad about hard playing this thing if worse comes to worse. But for that sake, I did run 2 copies of the EX1 Metalmamemon, but nowadays, I play 1 Metalmamemon and 1 Megadramon. And now for the Tech 1 of level 5s, we are playing 1 copy of the BT1 Metalgreymon. It having the inheritable effect of plus 3000 DP, I find comes in super clutch considering that Leviamon is a 13k DP Digimon, and that means if we go with Attack of the Heavy, playing an EX1 Machinedramon, we're going to be able to make it 14k DP to run it over. Otherwise, I would play the BT6 Megadramon that gives plus 2k DP instead. But we also play the EX1 Andromon, and the reason why we are playing this over the generic inheritable blockers, I find the effect to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck to find at level 6 is going to be extremely important, especially since we're really trying to find that BT11 Machinedramon as our first level 6. And we play 1 copy of the Metalgreymon to give it that security attack plus 1 for OTK potential, the EX1 Metalgreymon for piercing, and last but certainly not least, the Andromon. We gotta have at least 1 reboot inheritable in there so that way we can actually make use of our blocker reboot combination, in case we don't draw enough analog mans throughout the course of a game. And it also has the really useful of when digivolving de-digivolve 1. So despite us running a varied amount of level 5s, we have multiple level 5s that can actually de-digivolve to slow our opponent's game plan down. But as you can see, we are not running this card anymore, because instead we are actually running the brand new BT15 Gigadramon. Now, if you see my Tri-Cup episode, you would probably know why this card is extremely useful. However, but for those of you who don't know what it does, as the useful effect of on play, reveal the top 4 cards of our deck, we can add 2 level 6 or higher cards among them into our hand, which if we're playing 11 level 6s is pretty likely, mind you. And the second effect of, at the end of our turn, by deleting one of our Digimon, you can play 1 Digimon card with Dark Masters as a trade from our hand into our breeding area without paying the cost. Now, of course, we aren't really playing any Dark Masters in this deck, but actually the first part of that effect of by deleting one of our own Digimon is actually treated as a cost, which means that we can still actually do it even if we don't have any Dark Masters to play, which, minus spoilers, is how the deck is able to OTK. And also has the inheritable reboot, so it actually fits in quite nicely in replacing the starter deck Andromon. Now that we've gone through the actual top end and game plan of our deck list, we now have to go over how do we actually get there. Well, that leads us to level 4s of the deck, which we're playing a shocking amount if I'm being honest. We are actually only playing 2 copies of the EX1 Guardromon, as well as a small D-Brigade package of the HiCommandramons. Now, I will admit, this is an extremely low amount of level 4s. If I'm being completely honest, if you want to play an Evo-based machine list, I would never go lower than 6. The only reason why I'm playing 5 level 4s is actually because through a lot of testing, I found that I'm actually really talented at drawing level 4s. And that is honestly how ratios go sometimes in the Digimon TCG. Some people are just more talented at drawing specific cards than others. But what do these level 4s actually do? Well, Guardromon is a simple blocker, but it also has the main inheritable of, when attacking, you may trash 1 Digimon card with Machine or Cyborg and its traits in order to draw 2 cards. And for those of you who have tried a little bit of my machine list back in BT11, you would notice that the deck is really good at drawing cards. And that's actually the kind of deck that Machinedramon really is. The main focus of the deck is we're going to be trying to turn our deck upside down. If we have the majority of the deck in our hand as well as in our trash, we can basically pilot ourselves out of most situations. And this card really helps speed up that process. I was running 4 copies of it originally, but the only reason why I was playing 2 copies is because I wanted to fit 3 copies of the HiCommandramon. Now it has an attacking effect for D Brigade specifically, but we're actually going to be mainly using it for its inheritable effect, which is all turns when this Digimon would leave the battle area other than by one of your own effects, we can delete another D Brigade on the field in order to prevent that. The reason why we are playing this small D Brigade package is because we were trying to respect decks that can actually out Machinedramon fairly easily, such as Yellow Vaccine. Now if I'm being completely honest, in my experience of facing Yellow Vaccine with Machinedramon, it is actually able to beat it just fine. However, thanks to the BT14 Andromon, it is able to out our Machinedramon stack quite easily, and because of that, games take a little bit longer than I would like, which can leave me going to time, and that is something that I do not want in a national setting, and that is why we play a small D-Police protection package. But again, I would never encourage anyone to try to play 5 copies of level 4s. Try to fit at least 6 or more. But realistically, you only need to Digivolve into Machinedramon once, and once you do that, the deck kinda just falls into place. Any of the level 4 we draw is just a bonus, but that is why I play 5 copies. And last but certainly not least, we gotta get to the level 3s of our deck, which is how the deck is able to function. And of course, it goes without saying we do have to play 4 copies of the best boy himself, BT7 Dorumon. We are never gonna be using the on-play effect to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, although granted we probably could try to use it to find the BT12 Chaosdramon X antibody, but that's a little bit risky. We are mainly gonna be using it for the your turn. Whenever you place a Digimon underneath it as a source, we're able to gain 1 memory. Essentially combining it with cards like the EX3 Chaosdramon, we are going to be able to Digivolve it into either for 3 or even for free when on top of Machinedramon. And let's not also forget that the Chaosdramon X antibody slides in a Digimon at the start of main phase every turn. Meaning at the start of main phase, if you just have an analog man on the field as well as having a Dorimon underneath the Chaosdramon X antibody, we're going to be able to gain 2 memory at the start of our main phase every turn. It's almost as if we have a memory setter. So basically this card gives this deck a whole lot of extra speed as well as extra consistency, and that is why we have to run 4 copies. And next up, we are playing 3 copies of the ST13 Chikurimon. Now Chikurimon was actually more of a significant meta call. It actually answered a lot of decks in that format, mainly Anubismon, and that is because it is a floodgate that has the effect of all turns players can't reduce play cost. This deck doesn't reduce play cost at all, so we can actually just make full use of this. And Anubismon as a strategy really does focus on playing its bodies for reduced play cost. So timing this in the late game after we've outed our opponent's Anubismon can pretty much lock our opponent out of the game. Or if you manage to bring it out early and they don't manage to draw their early removal pieces, this can actually buy us extra turns, which is just what a Machinedramon player wants. But that's not all what this deck answers. It actually answered a lot of really good things in that format too. This stopped Bellstar, this stopped Crossheart, this hurt Hunters a little bit too. It even stopped the brand new Leopardmon X antibody from working, while also stopping one of our harder matchups being Royal Knights. All in all, this card covered a lot of matchups, and I think especially if you're going to be respecting the best deck in the room, Anubismon, there was no reason not to play it less than 3 copies. And last but certainly not least, we actually play 1 copy of the BT14 Commandramon. This is part of the small D-Police package that I ran before, and actually originally I ran 5 copies. Spoilers for those of you who haven't watched the vlog yet. When I said that I want to change my Machinedramon deck ratios, I was actually talking about the Dorumon and the Commandramon respectively. I was actually originally running a 5-card D-Police package, just to have it a little bit more consistency for that protection, but I found myself missing the Dorumon a lot, and that is why at the very end when I wanted to change my deck list before submission, I wanted to change the Dorumon to 4 copies and the Commandramon down to 1. And honestly, I still like it the way it is now, so that's why I haven't bothered changing it yet. Although granted, how I would probably change this coming in BT17 is I would actually take out the HiCommandramons for the Trailmons from BT17 that give my Machinedramon collision. And then this Commandramon could probably just be something else. I wouldn't really know just yet. I mean, when in doubt, just put BT16 Ukumon, am I right? And for those of you who are wondering what 2 cards were possibly missing from my deck list when the judges called me out, it was actually the SC15 Metalgreymon as well as the Andromon. Even though they were there in my previous deck submission last time, for some reason the starter deck cards did not show up in my second deck list when I changed my Dorumon and Commandramon ratios. So that was pretty weird, but I guess that was just a really unfortunate outcome. But now that we've gone through all the Digimon parts of the deck, now let's get to the option and Tamer cards. And might as well start off with the cards that glue this entire deck together. We are in fact still running 3 copies of the Black Memory Boost, but that's not the only search spells we play. We also play 3 copies of Defense Training as well. Now for those of you who didn't see my BT11 Machinedramon deck profile before, the reason why I decided to play Black Memory Boost is because it adds so much more extra consistency to the deck. And as we talked about before, the BT11 Machinedramon is our main bread and butter. It is going to be the main level 6 that we want to go into, as it helps us search for any pieces that we may be missing, as well as setting up our trash for the rest of the game. And that is why it's extra important that we make our deck as consistent as possible at reaching BT11 Machinedramon. And running 6 search spells, I was feeling pretty good about it. But the extra reason as why we're playing 6 search spells as well is because the strongest deck, Anubismon, also plays Gazimon as a part of a memory floodgate, which if we manage to draw only Black Memory Boost, that means we won't be able to actually use its delay effect to gain 2 memory. But if we play 3 copies of Defense Training, we have an equal amount of chance of seeing either of them, making it even more consistent to Digivolve into the BT11 Machinedramon and keep turn. Originally, I was only running 3 copies of Black Memory Boost and 2 copies of Defense Training, and that was mainly because I really value the amount of digging we can get from Black Memory Boost. But honestly, I really did miss running 6 search spells in the deck, and it just added so much more consistency that Machinedramon desperately needs. And Defense Training can also find us our option cards too, which I always find really useful. Which does leads us to our main finishing spell, 3 copies of Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. Now, I'm sure all you Machinedramon players know what this card does already, but for those of you who don't know what it does, it has the main effect of, by trashing 1 card in our hand that is Machine or Cyborg and it's trait, all of our machines that are level 6 gain Rush, and if they have a source in it, they can Blitz as well. This card just has to be at 3 copies in my opinion, because it's extremely important that we just have a spell that just guarantees us the game once we finish clearing up the field. And because this is a card that comes out straight from our hand for 0 memory, it is truly a card that our opponent is just never expecting. So more often than not, that might actually play into a sudden hard play of EX1 Machinedramon, or otherwise, at least this is a card that could just help us blitz for game. And let's not also forget that it has the security effect of, by trashing 1 Machine or Cyborg from our hand, we can delete one of our opponent's Digimon with the same play cost or lower as the card we discarded. So even if we don't manage to draw this into our hand, it's at least a kill spell in security, which helps prevent some OTKs on us as well. An in-engine archetype security bomb is always appreciated, and that is why we won 3 copies. But that is not the only kill spell we play. We also play Super Eradication Attack. That is the same security effect as the Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, but we're actually going to be mainly using this for the effect of, we can choose one of our Machine or Cyborgs and traits on the field, delete it, and then delete one of our opponent's Digimon with the same DP or lower as our first target. So at worst, it's a pretty solid kill spell, but at best, if you remember what I talked to you about from the Gigadramon from BT15, this card by itself is what enables our OTK, which if the game goes on long enough, which is what Machinedramon is known for, we are all the more likely to see this card. At first, I was trying to run 2 copies of it, just so we could be more consistent and actually drawing this card and getting that OTK off, but then we kind of lose a little bit of the identity of what Machinedramon is known for, and then we pivot a little too hard into the OTK line, and that makes it a little bit more bricky. Instead, we're focusing more on a Machinedramon deck that is capable of controlling their opponent's board, and then once they're whittled down, Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon is going to be able to close the game. And if for some reason we do manage to draw the Super Eradication Attack, we can just get a sudden OTK out of nowhere. But of course, a Machinedramon deck is not complete without running at least 3 copies of the Analog Man. And the only reason why I'm playing 3 copies of it myself is because I actually found that 4 copies to be a little bit bricky, and also, we don't really need to see that many Analog Mans in the early game. If anything, if we see it in security, that's great, but honestly, we only want to see Analog Man after we establish a Machinedramon on the board. The only time I feel comfortable playing an Analog Man in the early game, if we're up against a deck that's a lot more aggro-oriented, or if they're still taking their time in setting up. Machinedramon does love a slower game, so if they do give us the opportunity to take extra turns in setting up, I'm going to take those extra turns to set up an Analog Man. But otherwise, I would only set one up after I've set up a Machinedramon on the field. And finally, to round out the deck, we do choose to play 4 copies of the Dorimon as our Digitama of choice. And that is also because the same reason why we play 4 copies of the Dorumon, but instead of getting a memory, it allows us to draw a card. Card draw is everything in Machinedramon, as every card in our hand can act as a specific tool to get out of specific situations. And the sooner we turn our deck upside down, the sooner we're able to find those pieces. And this is why this is our Digi-Egg of choice. And now we get to the combo tutorial of the video. Now I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of me mentioning this all the time, but I did mean when I say that Machinedramon now has a way to OTK. And now I think it's time to finally show you how it does that. For this OTK setup, we are going to need the Machinedramon from BT11, as well as a Chaosdramon on top, in order to make sure that we are able to get those sources, but it's not exactly necessary for the combo if I'm being completely honest. Well, let's just say for simplicity's sake, we don't need it. And then on top of it, it has to be the Chaosdramon X antibody, and then this Chaosdramon X antibody just needs a way to do 2 damage. So for simplicity's sake, we're going to be using the Metalgreymon that has security attack +1. On the field, we are going to be needing a Analog Man, and then from our hand, we are just going to be needing a Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon, an EX1 Machinedramon, as well as any card in our hand that allows us to delete our own Chaosdramon X antibody. So we could use the Super Eradication Attack or the Gigadramon, but since it's the case of me showing my Nationals deck profile, we're going to be using the Super Eradication Attack for simplicity's sake. So as per the rules of OTK, let's say our opponent has 5 security here. We're going to be starting with the Chaosdramon X antibody, be swinging for 2 checks, which if we're obviously giving that Chaosdramon X antibody protection from its copying effects of a Chaosdramon, for example, it's most likely going to be living. We're going to be doing 2 checks here, like so. And then after that, we're going to be using a card called the Super Eradication Attack. Even if we're at 0 memory and this passes the memory counter over to -2, it's not a problem at all. So, by choosing the Chaosdramon X antibody, the wood effect of the Chaosdramon X antibody will trash our opponent's security, bringing them down to 2, and then we're going to be choosing to let our Chaosdramon X antibody die. Even if it has protection, we can just choose to let it die. And since it is copying all the effects of our Machinedramon and Chaosdramons, we're going to be choosing to copy the BT11 Machinedramon from its sources. Taking the Analog Man here and put it at the bottom of our deck, and then we're going to be able to play a Machinedramon Machinedramon in our hand for free. And then of course, the EX1 Machinedramon. And of course, the Machinedramon is going to be able to put in 5 more sources underneath. Let's just say for simplicity's sake, we have 4 more other random sources, but the key thing is we're still going to need a way to do 2 security checks. And that is why I'm using the Metalgreymon for simplicity's sake. But of course, if we did have, for example, like 2 MetalTyrannomons as well as a Metalgreymon for piercing, that is actually 3 checks on the first attack from the Chaosdramon X antibody, which means that we actually don't need the second security attack +1 in this case. But from here, we'll be able to get 5 memory, so even if we were at -2 memory, we're now back to 3, so we're able to continue our turn. And with the attack of the heavy mobile Digimon, all of our level 6 machines have rush, which means we're able to swing with the Machinedramon for 2 more checks, like so. And the last thing to keep in mind is that Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon is a lingering effect that lasts until the end of our opponent's turn. And because of that, any level 6 machine in our hand, except for the Chaosdramon X antibody of course, is able to be hard played and then blitz for game. Don't believe me? Well, as you know, the EX1 Machinedramon is able to just tuck in a source in order to gain 1 memory. Even if you only have 1 level 5 to slide in, we only need to have the 1 to swing for game. So the EX1 Machinedramon is able to tuck 1 source in, the Chaosdramon X antibody also has the on play to tuck a source in, and even the BT11 Machinedramon, like I told you, has the on play to be able to tuck another source in. And that is why I say any of our level 6s in our hand can just be hard played and blitz for game. And that is how OTK with Machinedramon. And that is especially why I decided to add the BT15 Gigadramon into this deck as well, meaning that we can actually choose to delete our Chaosdramon X antibody whenever we want, while also searching for potential level 6s into our hand in order to blitz. It's actually really funny how this card really helps with the deck. And there you have it. That is pretty much my list for the Machinedramon deck profile. Hope you guys all enjoyed, and I know this took a while, so I hope you guys enjoyed the updates that I added to this deck as well. Honestly, I'm of the opinion that Machinedramon is just one of those decks that if it's in the right hands, you can really pilot yourself out of any situation. But of course, we do have to address the elephant in the room. It is still super unfortunate of the outcome that I got in the Digimon National Tournament. But it's not all doom and gloom. I really am going to be taking that as a learning experience for next time. I'm going to take extra precautions before I submit a deck list. Will I be playing Machinedramon in the next national tournament? I don't know. Honestly, I don't think so. I've been playing with Machinedramon for over a year now, and if I'm being completely honest, I am craving to play something new. But Machinedramon is also one of those decks that gets hidden support in new sets every now and then, so I'm sure I'll probably still be cooking with it when the time comes. But that's gonna be it for the video. Thank you guys all so much for watching, hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next year. This time we're going to Worlds. Goodbye everybody!